here right now, but as live events pick up, more and more people want this kind of educational content. Like we've got one company that has us just interview all their exhibitors.
Cool.
It's fun stuff.
Keeps you plugged in.
But I look at some of the stuff we're doing now, and I'm like, I wish Cindy would have seen this.
That's your question in terms of the camp. Ignore it? Just you and I?
No, it's both.
Am I speaking to them? Am I speaking to, at the
A lot of the
conversation?
time we're speaking to each other, but like a lot of times when I really want to make a point, I'll put it both. And is the live stream started? They're streaming.
Welcome back. For our digital audience, we'll be getting going in about another minute, so hang in there with us. Also, for our digital audience, we've had some sound problems in our first two sessions of the day. We have confirmed that the recording of the sessions has perfect sound. So we will upload those recordings to the platform that you signed in on later today, this evening sometime. So you will be able to get the sound for those sessions. And did we confirm the sound's coming through okay this time? All right, looks like those problems are resolved. So we'll post the first two sessions of the day with sound later. Okay, and that brings us to our starting time. So welcome back to Live from MJSA Expo. I'm Andrea Hill, your host for this series. I'm the owner of Hill Management Group and the Works brands. And we are excited to bring this live streaming education to you from MJSA Expo. Expo is taking place in the Javits in New York City. It is taking place today, tomorrow, and until 1 p.m. on Tuesday. If you're in the region, please get over here and check out this trade show. MJSA is the only association that is specifically focused on serving the makers of jewelry and the suppliers of the makers of jewelry. And this exposition is filled with the partnerships and suppliers that you need for making your jewelry. So now our next session is We've Got Your Numbers. And to do that particular discussion, I needed somebody who really understood the numbers. And so I asked Joel Peck of Joel Peck CPA to join me. Joel is a CPA who has a lot of experience in all of the typical CPA responsibilities, as well as business valuation. He's got great experience in the jewelry industry, which is a different wrinkle on finances and accounting. And he also is an expert on how to prepare funding for your children's college education. So he's pretty diverse. And today we're going to talk about the numbers that we need to be thinking about in your business. So welcome, Joel.
Thanks, Andrea. What I find with small business owners, they tend to forget that they deal with uncertainty all the time. So when there's a question of something new that's uncertain, be it the global economy, local economy, even part of the industry, they're well versed in this, and they have to embrace that.
But we don't like to think we're dealing with uncertainty. We trick ourselves into thinking we're dealing with certainty almost constantly.
Good luck. No, especially in this business, and during the pandemic, what I heard a lot of businesses talking about is they essentially had to redesign their business like they were designing an airplane while the airplane was flying.
Yep.
Everything was different. They could rely on very little, and things around them were changing all the time. Be it in some cities, the ability to go to work. And then how do you do that? And then what happens to your employees? And where are your suppliers in this? So we've gone through this. We've been stressed a lot, and we've come through.
So when you're thinking, you're right off the bat, you're thinking about uncertainty. So are you thinking about it in the context of will there be a recession? Won't there be a recession? What's happening? Is that the kind of uncertainty you think that people are focused on right now?
It's what the news cycle is focusing people on, and for your business, it may or may not be relevant. So don't get. My suggestion is don't get too caught up in it. Especially when I find people, business owners, they find a hook, it's easy to blame it on that, rather than some other stress that's in their business that they conveniently don't want to talk about.
it is easy to say, well, there was a recession, so our business couldn't do well then. But somebody always makes money during a recession, right?
Funny about that.
So might as well be you. So let's say there is a recession. So let's say we're heading into a recession this year, and that it actually affects luxury goods. What are the few things that you think business owners should be focused on so they can be one of the businesses that makes money during a recession?
When you talk about it stressing luxury goods, I know people who are still waiting for the Christmas of 1995. We're in a luxury market. That's it. There are ups and downs, and we've got to pivot, whether it's manufacturing styles, new styles that are coming through that the designers are bringing out all the time. There is a desire for jewelry at some point, at some price level. Find it within whatever it is you're doing in your business and run towards it.
So you're saying don't lock down and get conservative, but market and be active in your business and look for your customer.
Yes, because the one word that usually is associated with the upcoming recession is temporary. So don't design your business for a long-term recession when no one thinks there's going to be one.
Do you have an opinion on what's coming? Are you willing to prognosticate?
There are a couple of global stresses. When any one of them has the lid lifted on it, I think the economy is going to explode in a good way. Not implode, explode. We're just at a point where there are a lot of stresses that have come from the outside. Any one of them gets lifted, and we start to run.
I read a statistic that said about 40% of consumers are still sitting on pretty good savings. That in the lower economies, people are definitely have spent through those savings, but in the economy, part of the economy where people are buying luxury goods, they're still sitting on pretty significant savings.
Well, absolutely. There have been 2 to 2.5 years of unspent money on vacations for those who have the money and save it. I know plenty of people who are looking for ways to spend money. It's there. Now, there are others who, again, at the other end, cannot, do not, and that's a different level of stress. But there's a whole group in the middle who are listening to the news, thinking there's something coming, and holding back on those purchases. At some point, it's going to be released. The stresses are going to be released. So be there ready.
All right. So I know that, and you were the one that said this to me. We were talking at one point in the past about preparing for a recession or being careful. And you said the things you're supposed to do financially to prepare for a recession are the things you're supposed to be doing anyway.
Absolutely.
So I remembered you correctly. So what are those things?
Well, I do want to mention that with all my clients and everything that I look at and do, I'm an optimist. I am looking for ways to get around and through things, whatever those stresses are. I'm sorry, remind me your question.
So what are the things that a business should be doing all the time that will have them prepared for a recession if one happens?
Concentrate on your receivables and payables. Collect the money wherever, however. Choose your customers wisely. Do not get caught in the middle. And work with your suppliers. You're their customers. They don't do business unless they do it with you. Very basic. It sounds almost boring, but it's the core of what makes a business run. And what every business owner has to focus on constantly. Just because it's boring doesn't mean, well, we focused on receivables now a good 75 years. We'll lift it now.
Well, but I know this to be true, but it astounds me that one of the biggest mistakes companies make is failing to make calls about overdue receivables. They just don't allocate the energy to it.
My question always is why?
Why?
The worst that can happen is you're no different than where you are right now. You find out that there's a real stress. Most of the time, a conversation solves a problem. You've got a customer who's not been paying. Get them to pay slowly. Work with them. They don't want to be on your bad list. They're going to need goods from you later anyway. Everybody's got a story. Work with the stories. These are your customers.
So just invite the stories. Say what's going on. How can we work this out?
And engender a different layer of relationship. You start talking to customers that way, they remember. It's a competitive business. Who do they want to buy from? They want to buy. Now, don't put yourself in the position of being taken advantage of.
No.
But every business owner knows when they're being told a story that's absolutely not true.
Well, and I've had business owners say to me, I'm afraid we'll lose them as a customer. It's like, if they don't pay you, don't you want to lose them as a customer?
Yeah. And through my professional life, I have decided on the clients I want to have, focus on them, and turn the others away. You can't, I can't, no one can be everyone to everybody. I know what I focus on. And as you mentioned, I do college planning, I do business valuations, I do sales tax, I do a lot of things that are all general, that they're core issues for businesses and families. I know what my lane is, and I stay in it. I've got many lanes, but I stay in those lanes.
And the payables thing, a lot of people will say, well, we'll just pay them 15 days late because nobody cares about 15 days late. You said manage your receivables and your payables. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's tough because someone's receivables is another person's payables. So I will always tell my clients the absolute dichotomy. Collect your receivables as quickly as you can and lean on your suppliers and pay your bills as slowly as you can. Whether it's free finance, a lot of companies no longer offer the free finance. So they've awakened to the fact that they've got to charge for it.
And then you pay the percentage.
You pay the percentage. Decide what you want to do. Expecting it to get better just because you want it to doesn't work. But have a plan. There are a multitude of plans that you can choose from. The conversations engender a plan.
So you're saying if you're going to lean on your vendors, have a conversation with them and then make a decision about whether or not to pay them.
Every conversation you're going to have with a supplier, put yourself exactly on the other side of the phone. When a customer calls you and says, we're running a temporary problem, can we have another 15 days, another 30 days? Can we take this large balance that we've built up and pay it off over 90? Well, now you're on the other side of that call. Absolutely. The worst that can happen is they say no. They've got to decide, your supplier has to decide whether they want to give you those terms or not. And ultimately, whether they want to do business with you going forward or not. Most businesses want to maintain those relationships, not cut them off. So work together.
Okay. So the first thing we're paying attention to is managing those receivables and payables, regardless of whether or not there's a recession coming.
Yes. Second, manage your own business.
Look, what does that mean to you?
When the last couple of years, in business circles of closely held businesses, those are my clients. A lot of the CPAs who are handling those businesses have left, whether they've left by choice or other plans have been made for them. And I'm getting these new businesses. One of the first questions I ask them is, why do you keep a set of books? Now, you'd be surprised at the answers I get from that. They think it's a joke. Why am I asking that? Why do you keep a set of books? If you keep a set of books to do your taxes.
Which is a lot of what people do. They think they literally just need an accountant to do their taxes.
If that's okay, fine, we're going to have a different relationship. I'm going to encourage you to use your numbers to help manage the business. But I know plenty of business owners, if there's one or two metric numbers that they need to keep track of, and if those are in line, they know they're fine. They don't need to teach a degree in finance. I work with people on their terms, not on mine.
Then they need to talk to me because I'm going to talk to you about management. Because your finances are not just there to file your taxes. They're there to help you make smart decisions about growth and profitability.
It is astonishing how many business owners manage their business based on what they have in the bank, what they think they're going to collect this week, and what they think they have to pay out this week.
So that's called living from the cash register, and it works for really small companies, but it does not work for...
I don't think it works for really small companies either.
Fair enough. But it is called living from the cash register.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not running a business. What I have found are the qualities that get someone to be an entrepreneur are absolutely antithetical to them running a business. So just think about this. And believe me, I respect everyone who has done this. But the skills you need, the ego, the drive to be an entrepreneur is very different than the skills what I call a serial entrepreneur has. The serial entrepreneur starts a business with a goal of selling it, building it and selling it. And the odd thing when you're looking to grow a business, to sell it as a business owner, the first thing you have to do is make yourself irrelevant to the business. Think about this.
Systematize everything. So your business buyer is going to dig in and find out what's below the surface.
Without you.
Without you. That's right. Fair enough.
That's what I find plagues a business. The qualities that got an owner into business successfully and the qualities to get out are very different. And if you're not sure what they are, work with someone.
It's very learnable.
You can advise people, you can put them on a path. I can advise them, their financial advisors, their CPA can do it, all of them. But do it. Make sure you're looking that way all the time.
I will never forget the first company I was president of. I was 33. It was a fairly large company. And I come up through the sales and marketing path. And I met a CFO, like in that role as a CEO for the first time. And I found out how does anyone live without this person? Like, a financial person weighing in on your decisions. And you can get a fractional CFO. You can have a great CPA that advises you on your business, not just on your taxes. Like, that advice is so powerful.
Turns out I spent last night with a friend who does exactly that. They are hired out, whether it's at a stress point in the company where the company is going to go public, some major event, but to get all the finances together. And the business owners are very often surprised. Oh, I've heard about that. We really should have that. Oh, we should have had that all along. And it works much better when you have to understand your numbers. Numbers talk back.
They tell stories.
They certainly do. My former partner used to tell me when preparing either a financial statement or a tax return, make it look like a Monet, not a Picasso. And you'd be surprised how many business owners I come in contact with who have a Picasso as their frame of business. It's stressful.
So that would be one piece of advice to everyone is to make sure you're taking, if you just have a bookkeeper that's plugging things into QuickBooks, you're not getting the full value of the advice you could be getting. You need somebody who's helping you learn how to read the stories of your numbers and make decisions from that.
Chances are, if all you're having a bookkeeper do is enter the transactions, their ultimate result is to get a bank reconciliation correct.
Correct.
That's where they stop. Now, what do you do with those numbers? They're there. Use them. Learn how to use them.
In our first session today, we were talking about building systems so that you could have metrics to make decisions on in your business, and the information that's going into your financial system is core to all those, to many of those business metrics.
So I'll challenge all of the owners here. Who are your advisors? Who do you rely on regularly? Is it a member of the family? Is it a CPA? Is it one of your suppliers who you have a great relationship with? Someone else in the industry? Do you have groups like this within the industry that get together and talk about this?
Yeah, we do. We have several different groups that get together as sort of brain squads. Buyers Intelligence Group does this extensively for retailers. I can't think of any, specific groups more in the manufacturing sector. But then there are other groups that you can join, like YPO, or what's the one that Mary Forte's in now? I'm blanking on it. But there are different groups that you can join where the business owners get together and discuss their financials and their metrics.
I remember you ran one of these a couple of years ago up in Burlington.
Yeah.
That I spoke at. And it's astonishing to stand in front of a group of people. They knew each other somewhat, but I start mentioning concepts and all of them are nodding their head. Everyone has the same problems, and we all think they're unique. Work with people. Again, the numbers tell a story. If they tell a story you don't like, find a way to change them. The complaining doesn't happen. I'm sorry to be very basic about these things. You, the owner, you live the business. I know because I'm your CPA. I know what goes on in the office, out of the office. But take those numbers, learn what they mean, and learn how to use them to make decisions that can benefit you, the business, the family, all the way through.
Now, I think a lot of people are really embarrassed to talk to a CPA or an accountant for the first time because they know there's something amiss in their numbers, or they know they're not taking good care of their numbers. And I always tell them, you don't go to the doctor for a full physical and refuse to take your clothes off, and the doctor's seen it all already. It's kind of the same, isn't it?
It is to a point. I've got a lot of people, other CPAs that I work with, who talk a little too flippantly to their clients. I respect what it is my clients are going through. I've been called in an article a financial psychologist, and it's one of those things that I treasure. I have to talk to you your way. You, the business owner, ask me a question. You don't want the textbook answer. You could have gotten that. You want me to step into your brain, understand everything that's going on, and give you the answer that works for you. Not a pablum answer, but the right answer in your framework. If you don't find a CPA who does that, get another one. I'm serious.
It's like shopping for therapists. But I think more to that point, it's okay if your numbers are a mess when you go to an accountant the first time, right? Or a CPA. You've seen it all. There's no judgment. There's just helping them get to a better place.
Some do judge, I'll be honest, and it's difficult to watch those situations evolve, but not everyone does. Yeah, this is not a judgment call. It's interesting you mentioned that. I have seen a shift the last couple of years of people so afraid of making a mistake. I don't know if it's because social media just presents the glorious things that are going, the things at the extremes. I don't know if that's the issue, but there's nothing wrong with making a mistake. And when I asked a bookkeeper, I'm confused about this number, immediately they're defensive. I asked about the number. I didn't ask why it got there, what you were doing when it got there, what could you possibly be thinking when you quit. That's not my point. I want to get the numbers correct, ultimately, so that the business owner can use those numbers. That's all I care about. If you have someone in your organization who's making people feel uncomfortable, counsel them or replace them. There's no need or room for it.
No, and you can't get good. I'll go back to the doctor analogy. If you go to the doctor and don't tell them all your symptoms, or if you're smoking every day but saying no, I don't smoke, they cannot help you. So it's like the numbers just need to get correct, and then be worked on so that you can have a stronger business.
I don't even need to take any tests. The numbers there are there already. They are telling me a story that I find is sometimes different than the story the business owner is telling themselves using the same information. That's a problem.
So which stories should we be looking for in our numbers? What are some good stories and what are some bad stories?
Compare numbers to the past. I mean, everyone has a season, and you know when you're going to ramp up and when you have to hit the mark. Take a look at your top 10. Your top 10 customers, your top 10 suppliers. They're changing, but they need to be coveted. Make sure you know who they are and deal with them differently than you're dealing with someone who's a pittance and is more of a nuisance.
Top 10 products too?
Always.
Categories?
Designs, new products. What do you do? You're in a style business. What are you doing to keep up? What are you doing to try and stay ahead? Is your pricing right? I did a whole series with Cindy, rest her soul, on pricing for designers.
I think that's when I met you. You were doing that.
Because people first of all, everyone feels price pressure, which is not necessary, and they price their goods based on the prices of raw materials, giving no value to the design. Blows my mind all the time. I'm a valuation guy.
I want to really stress this point. If what you're doing is figuring out all the costs of your raw materials and then just marking up from there, the same markup for every product, I hear too many people say, well, my formula is I add up all my raw materials and then I just double it, and that's my price. You could easily be leaving money on the table for a lot of your products. It's just, you need to know your costs, but your costs should not dictate your selling price.
I'll bear myself a little bit. Most CPAs work on a price per hour. well, where's the encouragement for me to become more efficient? If I'm going to take less, no, I price by the project. If I can get it done less expensively, I win. I'm challenged by what my ultimate customer feels is the value. There's a limit to that. I have to decide, do I want to work within that limit? If not, I move on to something else, or I find a different way to do it. So I'm stressed with it the same way as everybody else.
Everybody is. I know that we have some services that we sell at a much lower margin because we know they're door openers, and products are the same way. So if you've got a product that people are most likely to really want, and you could use that as a way to sell additional products, then you can have a product that's a lower margin, as long as the rest of your products make up for the margin.
And if I were to come in and take a look at your product line and say, which of those that you sell? Well, 2 years ago, I remember putting this one in, and we really haven't tracked it, why? The numbers are there.
You monitor it all the time.
Look, we are bombarded with data. We've got access to information in ways we never had before. Unfortunately, we're not using it. It's there.
Yeah, so monitoring our margins by category, by product, on at least a monthly basis, just looking at where the sales are, that's important, right?
Absolutely. I'm looking at my notes. There is one thing I did want to get to in terms of tax strategy that's really important for small businesses. The IRS has an initiative now to make sure earnings are reported as earnings. That means on W-2s, even more so than 1099s. If you've got and there's a major initiative being rolled out. If you've got people who work in the business and are employees, know the difference between what qualifies as being an employee versus an independent contractor, and follow it, because the IRS is coming through with massive staff and penalties to get people to get their employees, to get people who work in the business properly classified as employees on the payroll, paying Social Security. That's the thing.
So they're evaluating the amount of hours or the fact that they're only working for one business and saying that can't be a 1099, that needs to be a W-2?
Correct. As a 1099, if people are sending me 1099s, I get to write off all my expenses before I start paying self-employment tax. As a W-2 receiver, it's the top line that pays the Social Security and Medicare. And Social Security and Medicare is where the government is losing the opportunity to collect a lot of money. So that's why it's an initiative.
So, yeah, and a lot of people did move to 1099 status during the pandemic and were not moved back onto payroll.
No. And then there are other stresses that have come through with tax law state to state. If you work in New York, but you now have moved to Chicago. Illinois wants to tax you, New York wants to tax you, they both, and they don't care. You have to be in the middle and figure out. And we're not nearly through with that. Look at the changes in how we work. My wife has always been in sales, working from the house. At the time, 10, 15 years ago, she was the outlier. She switched careers a couple of years ago. They said, oh, no, we don't want you working from home. We need you in the office. She stuck to her guns. The publisher called her a couple of years ago and said, you know what? You were right, we were. People enjoy the ability to work on their time, in their space, and remote is all available. So, again, the good part about that, you can gain talent from anywhere.
That's why we went virtual in 2008. Because we could have talent from anywhere. I know in my company we have employees in multiple U.S. states and Canada and Italy.
Sure. Look, again, it's figuring out what's the core of your business and how you're going to get it done.
But you are saying you'll need a tax advisor to make sure you understand the rules for who's W-2 and who's 1099, and that you need to have it properly classified or you're going to have tax trouble?
Yes. And your tax advisor has gone through a lot. I am the beneficiary of new clients because in 2020, when they were changing the tax law, many CPAs said, wait, they're going to write it now, then they're going to have to rewrite it, then those are going to have sunset provisions. And again, so that's 4 different changes in the tax law, not to mention the fact that I'm based here in New York. I need to be a specialist in New York State, New York City, New Jersey, Connecticut, and federal, and there are times all 5 of those are different. Gone are the days. You want to try TurboTax? Good luck.
Well, and if there are any business owners listening to this broadcast and you are using TurboTax to file your business taxes, please stop, because just paying, what you will pay for proper tax advice will save you so much agony. Will save you money in the near term. It will save you potential fines in the long term, and it will pay for itself.
Unfortunately, it's gotten really complicated. And okay, that's a professional benefit for me. But it's real. I have to be at a point to not sit and just espouse tax law. I have to have a business. I have to translate that law. First of all, tell the people who need it and not bury them in all things that they don't need. And then have them use it as the rule book to produce money and keep as much as you can. It's there.
Now, in addition to the W-2 1099 issue coming up in taxes, are there still any provisions of the emergency funding for businesses that are in play for this last tax season?
The biggest one still out there is this employee retention credit.
What is that employer retention credit? Because everyone is getting 700 spam phone calls a week from people saying, we're going to help you with your employee retention credit.
I get them too.
So what is it? So we can start hanging up on it.
Basically, it is a government program that rewards businesses who kept people on during the pandemic. That's it. So notice it's payroll based. So any of my clients who thought they were getting away with murder by having people off the payroll, off the books, none of that qualifies. They're
Okay,
not
so
getting
it's
any
only for W-2 employees.
only for W-2 employees. But the thing is, so the way to collect it is you essentially got to go back and file amended, go back, have your CPA go back, have a company go back, whoever it is. I'll get to the choices in a minute. You've got to go back and refile amended payroll tax returns. This is the way, the method which you collect it. The reason I'm mentioning it is you can amend a return for up to 3 years. So think about it. The pandemic hit hard the first quarter of 20. Major shifts in payroll started the second quarter of 20. Those payroll tax returns were filed in July of 20. You've got until July 23, 3 years to amend them.
Okay.
That's why people are getting these calls. There are deadlines, and if you miss that deadline, you've got the third quarter. You have 3 years from October to amend it.
What is the time frame of retention that defines the retention credit?
More than we want to talk about here. I mean, there's a class that I took about how to qualify, what qualifies for the employee retention credit. I don't want to get people on tangents because most people, honestly, are not going to do this on their own. They're going to hire somebody, either me, if you have a payroll company.
Yeah,
use a payroll company.
I'm having ADP do ours because that's just part of our service.
Yeah, and even if they charge for that, what I find is the payroll companies are being the most fair in how much they charge. There is a litany of information that goes into this when people hire, how long they will be. I've done a couple of these. And quite honestly, what I did was I followed somebody else's model because there are hundreds of variables. I'm not expecting anybody to do it themselves. Either if you have a payroll company, use the payroll company, go to them first. You'll probably find they're best suited to handle this. Even still, so my clients are payroll companies. There's a questionnaire that has to be filled out. It has all sorts of other financial advice. It took me an hour and a half to fill it out. So there's a partnership here. The other way is to take these cold calls, but they're usually charging a percentage of the money they produce.
That's what we've noticed with almost all of them.
I never
That they're
liked that.
lead generation groups for percentage-based firms that are going to try and collect as much as they can. And I always worry that they'll file wrong because they're motivated to get as much back as possible because they get a piece of it. So
I'm not going to pass judgment on it yet, but look, there are a number of options and variables. If you have a payroll company, start with the payroll company. After that, go a number of different ways. Loop your CPA in. We all know who the better providers are.
But the other thing I've noticed is a lot of small business owners think they're too small to have a payroll company. So they do the payroll through QuickBooks and they write the checks themselves. And the reality is, a payroll company is an incredibly affordable option for even very few employees, 1 or 2 employees. You do pay a fee, but then they take care of all the employee tax filings for you. The checks go out when they're supposed to. It's just a really simple way. I don't want people to think they're too small for a payroll company.
Absolutely not. Payroll has become a huge part of every business. Remember the days before HR departments were all over the place?
Yep, there was still a payroll department.
Absolutely.
Yep. So that's another piece of your numbers. And then when things like this employee retention credit come through, because you never know when the IRS is going to do something like this, your payroll company has all those records and they can quickly make those filings that are otherwise confounding to the rest of
A
us.
company of modest size, 10 employees, you're talking about over $100,000 in many cases in this employee retention credit.
Wow. Okay, that's definitely worth going after.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else in taxes that business owners need to be thinking about right now?
Well, the 100% write-off for meals, that expired last December. If you didn't buy the luxury vehicle, December 31st, that $100,000 also is gone. There are a number of provisions that were in the 2017 tax law that have what's called sunset provisions. I don't even want to mention them because all too often we focus on the sunset and then they're extended. So just know that there are changes coming. Do not assume that everything's going to be the same as it was last year or the same that next year is going to be. I hate that they changed the rule book. Believe me, I remember the days when I had a wall full of tax research that then got synthesized down to a couple of CDs that now is a weekly newsletter and a lot of research. It's changing fast, changing hard. Look, I cannot design a ring. I know nothing about metallurgy. I stay in my lane, but you can riff on me. That's what I do.
And staying on, I'm glad it's fun for you because staying on top of tax law would not be fun for me.
I had to embrace that I loved change. If I'm not going to love change, I'm not going to survive successfully in my line of work. I am the guy who, as a kid, remember if gear A turns counterclockwise, which way does gear Z? I love that as a child. So I was primed for this.
Okay, so the numbers, we're supposed to be paying attention to our receivables and payables and monitoring our top performing clients, most important vendors, pricing and margins, really concentrating on margins regularly. What other numbers should our business owners be paying attention to?
Got to watch cash flow and overhead. Okay. Overhead is that slow drip bleed that keeps on going, whether or not we have a good month or a bad month. What I find is a lot of people, when they got stressed in business, they put things that used to be variable, they put it on a normal recurring monthly schedule.
An example.
I knew as it was coming out of my mouth, I should have had an example ready. But you know your numbers. If you find that you've got a recurrent, anything that used to be a variable expense over the year, that you decided with your supplier to monetize in a monthly fixed rate, well, now you can't go anywhere with that without that monthly fixed. And as those numbers rise, think about it. If you've got to cover X amount of overhead, that's in your gross profit, not your sales, right?
Yeah, the same thing is coming out every month no matter what.
Right, and it's coming out of your profit number, not your sales number. So be sure you know what that profit number is, what your cost of sales is, and then do the math or have someone help you do the math going backwards. If this is my nut, this is my run rate.
This is what I have to cover.
This is what I've got to cover. What does that mean in terms of net profit, gross profit, and what does that mean in terms of sales?
Well, and one of the things I worry about is a lot of people, it's so easy to pay bills electronically. It's so easy to set things up for auto pay, but a lot of business owners don't know what subscription costs are hitting their business. And in many cases, we go in and do technology audits. They don't know how many different software packages they're paying for, and what that's costing. It's just become a hidden expense.
Or software packages they're paying for and not using.
Yes, that too.
I've been guilty of that also. I signed up for something, then I signed up for something else, never realizing that it was duplicate. And now I'm paying for two and I really only need to pay for one. And Okay, they'll fall off $60, $80, $100, $200 a month repeatedly and multiple different line items.
Yep. All right, let's talk about cash flow, because that's the lifeblood of a business, and I think a lot of business owners don't really spend enough time focusing on not just whether they have enough cash right now, lack of cash right now, we really feel that, but thinking about how to prepare for cash needs in the future.
Well, the biggest problem is where you're going to get the money. Banks have become resistant and much more careful. I had one client, I think it was 2 years ago, in order to give him a $300,000 loan, they needed to have $250,000 in the compensating account.
It's like, why would I pay interest on this? I have it in my account.
You're loaning me my money and charging me interest. But in some cases, that's what's available as a starter. They need personal guarantees. Those are not going away. Everyone is resistant to those, but the banks, they don't want to get left holding the bag. I get calls. I, as the CPA, get calls from the banks. They want to know that there's a plan. Good business, bad business. They ask me about the plan. If I don't have a plan to present and the owner of the business, think about what that says to the future of the bank loan. So that's one. Family members, that's tough. If it's still available, your own savings, nobody wants to go into that. So unless you've got some sort of benefactor out there, it's really self-generated. Now, if you know that if there isn't a money source that you can easily tap into, boy, you have to be careful about what numbers are coming in, what numbers are going out, and when there's a deviation from the plan.
That means there has to be a plan. And we're talking about sales plan here. We're talking about what am I going to do to generate the sales so that I have the money, and what's it going to cost to generate the sales, because growing is expensive.
Thank you for being that voice. I deal with the numbers after the sales come in. I appreciate you. Yeah, you've got to plan that in advance. And what's it going to take to have that new design or the new material? Can you source it? What if it takes off?
Oh God, one of the scariest calls I get is, you won't believe what happened. Walmart wants my line. And I go, let's talk about how expensive that's going to be and how are we funding it?
And can you do it? Is it reasonable, realistic? The carrot is enormous. But
so is the stick.
And what are the costs? What are the risks? What are the chargebacks? I mean, the larger companies, those chargebacks are massive. And you've got to, if you're not prepared for it, it'll be a very quick success with a very long cost.
So when talking about managing our numbers, it's knowing that our sales plan needs to be constantly worked on, attended to, analyzed, so that we know what it takes to achieve a plan, energy-wise, cost-wise, effort-wise, so that when we look at our financial numbers, we know if we're going to have the cash we need for our overhead and our growth, right?
Yes, and what's the first thing you have to do after you have that plan? Have a plan B. Because life doesn't always work out the way we plan it. You cannot live a business so much on the edge that if any major item goes astray, you're lost. You've got to have that plan B. May not like it, may want to put it off as far as you can, but have it. You have to have it.
So what are the elements of a plan B? I'm assuming part of it's a buffer.
It's all a buffer.
It's all a buffer, okay.
And so then in the buffer, if we've already determined that a plan B is when the banks say no, the family says no, your savings say no.
And your sales said no.
And your sales said no. So that buffer has to be something you already generated 6 months, a year ago.
So what should businesses have in their buffer? Is there any kind of rule of thumb?
There is no rule of thumb, but if you're at that point where you don't know what the buffer is, personal finance, they always say 6 months of operating costs in an accessible account, not invested. Okay, so think about that. How many businesses do you work with that have readily available funds to run 6 months with no revenue?
No, I don't think I work with any that can do 6 months with no revenue, but I have a lot more today than in pre-pandemic that could do 6 months with significantly reduced revenue. I'm seeing more business savings built up.
That's a function of reality, right? 2018, ask someone, what's the likelihood that the entire world is going to shut down for anywhere from 2 to 8 months with different stresses in different countries and the ability to not get goods when you want or need them? Okay, who voted for that? Zero.
They were still voting, zero were still voting for it 2 months in. I think it finally hit everybody about 4 months in.
We were told around just before St. Patrick's Day, 2020, that this should last 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah.
And look what it did. So if we don't learn from this, nobody's fault but our own. Do not expect that it's coming back tomorrow. Do not expect that it's not ever coming back.
And there's a lot of room for interpretation in that.
Yeah.
So cash flow planning is dependent on sales planning and knowing what your overhead is and what you have to cover every month, and then figuring out how to pay for the growth you've got planned.
The most difficult part about that, I talked about the rearview mirror. You're having a banner year. So you want to do everything. You want to celebrate. So you have a company party. You offer enticements. You offer the bonuses. Where in that list of priorities is that cash cushion to survive the next stress? If it's on the list at all, generally it's on the bottom after vacation.
And it needs to be on the list.
It has to be on the top.
Yep.
Because you're there providing this buffer because we've acknowledged the banks are not going to help you, your family's not going to help you, your savings is not going to help you.
Right.
You have to create that last source.
And one important thing, like I know my business bank encouraged us when we first switched banks. Before I was putting money in our business savings account, as we were flush through money in the savings account. But our new business bank said we want to automatically transfer from your operating account to your business savings account a set amount of money every month, and they'll pay us interest on it, which you don't get in your business checking account, and it adds up fast. So putting some kind of savings on autopilot, I think, is useful.
Kudos to the bank. This is a bank that you want to work with.
Yep.
They're giving you suggestions and the ability to pull it off. Absolutely. I want their advice. I want their name on my checks. I want to go fly the flag.
Well, and any bank will you can set this up. Your bank may not be giving you good enough advice, but you can still set up auto transfer into your business savings account.
Always.
Anywhere.
It's difficult. Look, as a small business owner, it's all on us. I use the term small business. What I really mean is closely held business.
But it is small business, and I think that's useful for us to think about, because there's small enterprises, medium-sized enterprises, and large enterprises. And 98% of the jewelry industry worldwide falls into this small business category. And so we want to talk in terms of small business challenges.
So that small business has to produce enough money to cover its costs, to cover its payroll, to cover the retirement of its employees and owners. And now these two people are standing here or sitting here going, and you've got to have a cushion?
And you have to have a cushion.
Yes.
Business ownership isn't for the faint-hearted.
Correct.
But if you've decided to do it, let's do it well.
It's about the plan. If you have a plan that is okay with break even after you've covered all these, that's the best you're going to get.
That's a lot of work for not very much benefit. If you're just breaking even.
But I've drawn a big salary, and my family has drawn a big salary, and we're living very well. And the business,
then hopefully you're investing it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's talk about inventory. I sometimes have jewelers tell me there's no such thing as aged inventory because our inventory is gold and diamonds and How old does inventory have to be before we call it aged, Joel?
I use a year.
I use a year. I think everybody uses a year in the financial world.
Okay, the financial world, except we're not in a position of selling old inventory and melting it down, right? It's the finance people who think it's a year. What happens to the business owner? well, I'm not sure, it could come back, I could use it
It
for
never
some-"
comes
No.
back. This is our quote for today. It never comes back. Melt it if it's old, make something new, because you do not want your jewelry sitting in the safe collecting dust when it could be funding your growth plan.
It's costing you money.
It's costing you money.
People don't, they think it's not costing them anything. Think about what can happen when that money, when the jewelry is converted to cash. That could be your cushion. I've seen that happen in plenty of businesses.
Yeah, but you'll get like a lot less money for it when you're in a panic needing the money. Like I've
Watch what happened to metal prices.
lots of jewelers thought they were going to retire on what was in their safe, and they find out it's a paltry payday when they finally cash it all in at 10 cents on the dollar.
If it has stones in it, it's even rougher.
Yep, it's true.
I mean, raw metal, I've got some people in the trade who are dealing with raw metal, and still they're going to lose something on the assay, the melting. But it produces money. It produces nothing when it's sitting in the safe.
And then they say, I don't want to lose that labor. You lost the labor. It's still in your safe. You've already spent that money and didn't sell it. It's not worth anything to you anymore.
So you know it, I know it, the finance business knows it, and we're still talking about it.
Well, it's interesting because during the pandemic, so we typically want, if you really want enough money to grow your business, you need to be turning your inventory about 4 times a year. Pre-pandemic, the jewelry industry was at 0.88 average turns per year. So less than a quarter of the turns, because if you wanted, the biggest driver of your cash flow that we were talking about is your inventory turn. No inventory turn, no cash flow.
With the little lie that we tell ourselves, oh, but I have it in the safe.
Your safe is not a bank. So during the pandemic, the jewelry industry spent down a lot of its old inventory. They were able to sell things you normally can't because new stuff wasn't coming in. And those turns went up. But now we're starting to see the inventory building again, and the turns are going back down.
So
And that
telling me the
concerns me.
pandemic was convenient?
It was convenient to a lot of people.
So let's learn from it. We were stressed. We found that this works. Do it again. You know, these are real basics that we need to learn from. We've experienced it. We've lived it. Now let's get some benefit out of it.
Yeah, that's true.
Did you ever think that you can force conditions to prove your point on something like this?
No, I've raised children. I know that doesn't work.
Touche.
Keep raising them. Anything else we've left off? Because we're starting to run out of time. We've talked about cash flow and payables and receivables and pricing and margins.
The advisory board, having a sounding board.
Every business needs a sounding board. It could include your CPA. I mean, who do you like to see on a sounding board?
Honestly, I like to see competitors. The jewelry business is rife with people who know each other, who are experiencing the same kind of stresses, and need to talk to one another.
Yeah, and getting into
sharing those ideas is fabulous.
It really is. And these skull groups where we can find them, they're super helpful. Because I know when I got to the jewelry industry, and I had run businesses in 3 other industries at that point, it really was different in some significant ways.
Absolutely. Okay, so what?
So it was really helpful to learn from people who already knew what those numbers looked like.
You've proven that it works. Is it difficult to put together another group? Sure. Is it valuable? Absolutely. Put the effort in.
Yep. So to your point about advisory groups, every business, no matter how tiny you are, should have an advisory group. Some kind of a board that you form that challenges you, because your employees, no matter how great an employer you are and how well you get along with your employees, they are never going to be brutally honest with you about how you run the business, but your advisory group will.
I'm glad you said challenge. You do not want people who tell you you're doing everything right.
That's not an advisory
That's
board.
not an advisory board.
It's a date.
You want people who are going to ask the hard questions and going to keep you on point. We all have these deflections. I'm a fabulous procrastinator. I'd like to talk to you about it later. You know, this is the way. Look, we need a protective mechanism, but a protective mechanism that doesn't produce anything but protection. It's kind of thin.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I've gone so far as to hire a sales advisor coach for me, because I can have sales meetings with my staff. But you know, when you own the business and it's a small business, you have a primary responsibility for sales. And who's sitting down with you every week, looking at your sales pipeline and saying, why is this person still in this stage? When are you moving them? How long have you been trying to sell this client? Isn't it time to move on and pick some new ones to sell? Like, as a business owner, I needed a sales coach that would push me.
Did somebody move the cheese? Remember that a couple
Yeah, I
of
do
years ago?
remember that. That's true.
This is happening all the time.
Yep.
You've got to know what your customers want, because that's what you're going to sell. They're not going to buy what you're selling. They're going to buy what they need.
Right.
So you have to be the person who provides what they need. I mean, I'm in a service business. People ask me, well, how do you find clients? I said, wait, I want you to tell me the pool in which they swim and give me a fishing rod. I want to know where they're swimming. I need to know what they want. Because if I'm selling something that I think is great that they don't want, we're nowhere.
So that's a really good lead into my last point on the numbers that every small business owner needs to be on top of, which is, do you know what's in your sales pipeline? Do you have a sales pipeline? Are you managing your sales pipeline? If you don't know what the word sales pipeline means, then we need to start there. But selling is the primary objective of a small business. There's no cash flow without it. There's no margin without it. There's no growth plan without it.
That's why we're in business.
That's right.
That's why they put revenue on the top number.
And marketing's not the same as selling. And I own a marketing agency, so I mean, I love marketing, but marketing is in service of selling, but it is not selling.
And we know that styles change, preferences change. Everything that's around us is affecting everything we do. The greatest, maybe this is a good spot to end with, I think the greatest strength of smaller businesses is that they can be nimble.
Yes.
You cannot move a large business that well, that easily. You can
Easily
move a
at
small
all.
business almost on a dime.
You can.
That takes care of stresses, temporary ones, longer range ones. If it's a permanent stress, you got to change something.
But
in your
don't
life.
be moving it all the time because you don't have a plan.
Oh, you
No, you gotta have a plan.
You've got to have the plan, two plans, an A and a B.
All right, I think that's the time we have for covering. Let's see what time is it. Yep, we are. It's time to wrap up. We're talking about we've got your numbers. We covered most of the numbers, I think.
It's been a pleasure talking about this.
It's always fun to talk with you, Joel. This is Joel Peck, CPA. Joel Peck of Joel Peck CPA. I never know what to do with economist businesses. It happens with designers too. Anyway, this is Joel, and I go to him for financial input all the time. And I'd like to thank you for joining MJSA, or live from MJSA Expo, both our digital and our live audiences.
Good luck to the owners, and thank you for the opportunity.